Close your eyes for 3 seconds. Now open them. In those 3 seconds, how many thoughts race through your head? If you could count them, you've already discovered something that 99% of people don't realize about how the mind really works. If you lost count, you've discovered something even more important. There's a secret to silencing the mind, a secret Eckhart Tolle revealed after years of suffering. A secret that goes against everything you've learned about meditation, mindfulness, and mental control. The secret isn't to stop the thoughts, it's to discover who's watching them. And when you discover that subtle difference, everything changes. Have you ever tried to hold water in your hands? The harder you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. The tighter you grip, the emptier your hand becomes. The mind works exactly the same way. But there is a way to hold the water, and when you discover it, you'll understand why you've struggled so much until now, why every attempt at meditation has turned into a war against yourself. I imagine you've tried meditation, downloaded an app, sat in a comfortable position, closed your eyes, took a deep breath, and then the war began. Stop thinking, stop thinking, stop thinking. And the more you told yourself that, the more thoughts appeared. As if your mind had become a faulty radio, tuned into a dozen stations at once. Classical music mixed with breaking news, a pizza commercial interrupting a philosophy podcast, all at the same time, getting louder and louder. You tried counting your breaths. 1, 2, 3. Did I leave the stove on? 4, 5. I need to answer that email. 6. Why can't I even count to 10? You tried repeating a mantra. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani. What time is it? Padme Hum, I need to buy milk. It's Om Mani. You tried visualizing a tranquil beach, and you managed it for exactly 5 seconds until a mental to-do list for tomorrow appeared, and you thought, I'm incapable of meditating. You're not alone. 9 out of 10 people give up on meditation in the first few weeks because they believe they're incapable of silencing their minds. Meditation centers around the world are filled with frustrated people. Mindfulness apps are deleted every day by people who feel like failures. But what if I told you that you're trying to do something impossible? What if I told you that the very attempt to silence the mind is what creates the noise? What if I told you that there's a completely different way, that requires no effort, no technique, no years of practice? Eckhart Tolle discovered this at 29. On a night he was so depressed he considered ending it all. He was a Cambridge student, academically brilliant, but internally he lived in a constant mental hell, chronic anxiety, deep depression, a critical inner voice that never stopped. That night, he lay in bed, repeating the phrase that had become his mantra of despair. I can't stand living with myself anymore. And then something strange happened. A question arose out of nowhere, as if from another place. Who is this I that can't stand living with myself? If I am me, who is this myself that I can't stand? For a moment his mind went completely blank, and in that moment of silence, Eckhart realized there were two, the thinker and the observer of thoughts, the voice in the head, and who was listening to the voice, the I that suffered and the I that was aware of the suffering. In that instant, he felt as if he were being sucked into a void, but not a terrifying void, a void filled with peace. He passed out, and when he woke up the next morning, everything had changed. The depression had vanished, the anxiety had evaporated, the critical voice was still there, but it was as if someone had drastically lowered the volume. And for the first time in his life, Eckhart experienced what it was like to live without resisting his own thoughts. This experience changed his life forever, and it can change yours too. Because Eckhart's discovery reveals a fundamental truth about the nature of the human mind. The mind you're trying to silence is not you. You are the one observing it. Let that sink in for a moment. You are not your thoughts. You are the consciousness that perceives thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the space where emotions appear and disappear. You are not your personal history. You are the timeless presence that witnesses the story. Think of a television on in an empty room. The TV keeps making noise, broadcasting shows, commercials, news, but there's no one watching. Thoughts are like that TV. They keep happening, but you don't have to watch. The difference is subtle, but it transforms everything. When you try to stop your thoughts, that you're fighting against your own nature. It's like trying to stop your heart from beating, like trying to stop your lungs from breathing. The mind was made to think, just as the heart was made to beat, just as the eyes were made to see. You don't fight against your heart to make it stop beating. You simply let it do its work while you live your life. But when you simply observe your thoughts, without judging them, without trying to control them, without identifying with them, something magical happens. They begin to lose their power on their own, like waves on a lake. If you try to stop the waves with your hands, you'll create more waves. You'll agitate the water even more. But if you simply observe, they calm down naturally. They return to the state of stillness that is their original nature. Have you ever noticed that when you're watching a really engaging movie, you completely forget about your problems? For 2 hours, your mind is quiet. Not because you forced it, but because your attention was completely absorbed. Your habitual thoughts simply stopped appearing, not through suppression, but through lack of attention. That's the secret Eckhart discovered. It's not about emptying the mind. It's about filling your attention with the present moment. It's like changing channels on a television. You don't break the TV. You don't fight against the programs you don't want to watch. You simply shift your focus, and there's a specific channel that's always available, always broadcasting. And that produces natural peace when you tune into it, the channel of the present moment. But here's what nobody tells you. The mind has a natural resistance to this. It was programmed to think about the past and the future, because that was necessary for the survival of our ancestors. Imagine our ancestors living on the African savannas 50,000 years ago. They needed to remember where the lions were. They needed to plan where to find water. They needed to anticipate climate changes. Those who only lived in the present, admiring the sunset, died attacked by a predator. The mind that plans, that analyzes, that worries, was selected by evolution because it increased the chances of survival. But today, that same programming that saved us is killing us from the inside. Your mind continues to look for dangers to avoid, even when you're safe in your apartment. It continues to look for problems to solve, even when there are no real problems. It's like a security system that never turns off, like a detective who can't stop looking for crimes, even in a completely peaceful city. And then it invents problems, creates scenarios, relives situations that are over, imagines catastrophes that will never happen. Do you know this feeling? That thought that pops up out of nowhere about a conversation you had 3 days ago, and suddenly you're rewriting everything you should have said? Or that mental movie about everything that could go wrong at work tomorrow, even though you have evidence that everything will be all right? Or that endless to-do list your mind produces the moment you try to relax. This is your mind doing the job it was programmed for, in a world that no longer needs this kind of constant vigilance. It's like wearing medieval armor to go to the supermarket. The armor served well in the past, but now it's just unnecessary weight. But here's the good news. You can reprogram this tendency, not by fighting it, but by redirecting your attention. Eckhart Tolle calls this presence, and he discovered that presence isn't something you do, it's something you are. You are already present. You always have been. The problem is that your attention is hijacked by thoughts about the past and the future. It's like being in a room with a beautiful window overlooking a garden, but only looking at the shadows on the wall. The light has always been there. The garden has always been there. You just need to turn your head. But how to do this in practice? How to interrupt decades of mental conditioning? How to break the habit of living in your head? Eckhart Tolle teaches a technique so simple it seems too obvious to work, but it's precisely because it's simple that it works, because the truth is always simple. It's the lie that's complicated is ready. The next time you realize you're lost in thought, just ask one question. Who is thinking? Don't try to answer intellectually. Don't create another mental argument. Just feel the question. Let it reverberate in the space of consciousness, and then pay attention to the silent space that appears before the mental response. That space is you. That is the observer. That is the consciousness behind the thoughts. When you connect with this observer, thoughts automatically lose their power, like a child throwing a tantrum. If you give attention, argue, try to convince, negotiate, they will continue. But if you simply observe with loving presence without reacting, it stops on its own. Your thoughts work the same way. They need your identification to exist. They feed on your resistance. When you stop feeding them with reactive attention, they simply dissolve, like clouds in a clear sky. You don't need to fight the clouds. You don't need to push them away, you just need to remember that you are the sky, and the sky is never touched by the clouds, no matter how dark and heavy they are. The clouds appear in the sky. They cross the sky. They disappear in the sky. But the sky remains untouched, always pure, always spacious, always peaceful. Your thoughts are the clouds. You are the sky. But there's something even deeper to all this. Eckhart Tolle discovered that when you stop identifying with your thoughts, you discover who you really are. And this discovery changes everything. Because you realize that most of your suffering doesn't come from external situations. It comes from your mental resistance to situations, from your need for things to be different from what they are, from your identification with the voice in your head that constantly comments, judges, compares, criticizes. And when this identification dissolves, you find a peace that is independent of external circumstances, a peace that has always been there, waiting for you to stop looking in impossible places because you were looking for silence in the mind. But silence is in the consciousness that observes the mind. It's like looking for darkness in a light bulb. Darkness isn't in the light bulb, it's the space around it. And you are that space, and you always have been. Now let me guide you through an experience that will show this in practice. First, feel the weight of your body in the chair or wherever you are. Don't think about it. Just feel it. Notice the pressure, the temperature, the texture. Now, without moving anything, notice the air touching your skin. It may be an almost imperceptible breeze or the temperature of the room. Feel the air going in and out of your lungs. Don't control. Just observe the natural movement. Now notice the sounds around you. It could be the sound of traffic, people talking, the fan, any sound. Just listen, without judging whether it's good or bad, without trying to block it. You just did something extraordinary, and for a few seconds your mind was completely quiet, without effort, without struggle, without complicated technique, because you redirected your attention from the mental to the sensory, from thought to direct experience. And when you are truly present in the body, connected with the sensations, the mind automatically quiet. It's like changing channels on a TV. You don't turn off the TV, you simply change the focus. And this is the first step in the inner revolution that Eckhart Tolle teaches. He calls it anchoring in the body, because the body is always in the present. The body has no past or future, it only knows the now. And when you connect with the body, you automatically connect with the present. But here's what happens when you deepen this practice. After a few minutes of observing the sensations of the body, you may begin to notice something very subtle, a space of silence between one thought and another. At first, this space lasts fractions of a second. You almost don't notice it. It's like a flash of light between heavy clouds. But as you practice, as you learn to recognize and appreciate these moments, this space will expand, like a crack in a wall that widens until it becomes a window. And through this window, you begin to see who you really are. Not your thoughts, not your emotions, not your personal history, not your problems, not your accomplishments, but the pure consciousness that witnesses all of this. And this consciousness has a very specific quality. It is completely stable. It never changes. It never shakes. It never ages. It's like the bottom of the ocean. No matter how turbulent the surface, how huge the waves, down there, there's always a profound calm. Your thoughts are the waves on the surface. Your emotions are the ocean currents. Your experiences are the fish swimming by. But your consciousness is the entire ocean, vast, deep, immeasurable. And when you recognize yourself as the ocean, instead of identifying with the waves, you discover something revolutionary. You realize you never needed to control the waves. They come and go naturally. They're part of the ocean's nature. The ocean remains untouched. A storm might agitate the surface, but it can't disturb the peace of the depths. A tsunami might be devastating on the surface, but 50 meters down, the water barely moves. When you recognize yourself as that depth, as that vastness, you find a stability that doesn't depend on anything external. But there's something even deeper that Eckhart teaches. When you truly settle into this observing consciousness, You begin to realize it's not located in your head. It's not produced by the brain. It's not a byproduct of neural activity. It permeates everything, now your entire body, the space around you, the air you breathe. It's as if you were a single drop that discovered it was always the ocean, as if you were a wave that realized it was always the water, as if you were a ray of sunlight that understood it was always the light. And in this moment of recognition, something miraculous happens. You stop feeling separated. You stop feeling isolated. You stop fighting against life, because you realize you are life itself expressing itself through this specific human form. You are universal consciousness, experiencing reality through your eyes, your ears, your heart. And when this perception settles in, really settles in, not just as a nice idea, your problems don't magically disappear, but your relationship with them changes completely. They become like clouds passing in the sky of your consciousness. You see them, you recognize them. You might even feel your emotions related to them, but you're no longer disturbed by them in the same way. Like watching a sad movie on a cinema screen, you might feel the emotion of the story. You might even cry with the characters, but some part of you knows it's not real, knows it's just a movie. Your difficult thoughts and emotions become like that, real on the level of human experience, but not on the level of essential being. You may feel sadness, but you are not the sadness. You may experience fear, but you are not the fear. You may have anxiety, but you are not the anxiety. You are the conscious space where all these experiences appear and disappear, and from this fundamental shift in perspective, a natural compassion is born for yourself, for your human limitations, for your fears, anxieties, inadequacies. You stop fighting against them, stop trying to eliminate them, stop feeling guilty for having them, and you begin to embrace them as part of the human experience. Like a mother who holds a crying child. She doesn't deny the crying. She doesn't try to stop the crying by force, but she offers a space of unconditional love where the crying can exist and naturally transform. You become that loving mother to your own thoughts and emotions. And when you offer this space of radical acceptance, they naturally transform, not because you forced them to change, but because love has a natural alchemic capacity. It transforms everything it touches, not through force, but through acceptance. Like the sun that melts the ice. The sun doesn't fight the ice, it simply shines, and the ice naturally transforms into water. Your loving presence is like that sun. It melts inner resistances through acceptance. Now let me be completely honest with you. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. Eckhart took years to fully integrate this understanding, to consistently live from this perspective. Even today, decades after his initial experience, he goes through moments where he gets lost in thoughts. The difference is that now he has a clear reference point. He knows how to come home. He knows how to recognize when he's identified with the mind, and he knows how to disidentify. Like an experienced navigator who can orient himself by the stars even on a cloudy night. And you too can develop this skill of inner navigation. Every time you realize you're lost in thought, remember, you are not the thought. You are the one who perceives the thought. And just that remembrance is enough to break the identification, like waking up from a dream. The moment you realize you're dreaming, you automatically detach from the dream experience. You might continue in the dream, but now you know it's a dream. Thoughts become like that, which you can observe them, but you know they're not you. But here's something that might surprise you. As you deepen this practice, as you become more skilled at recognizing the difference between consciousness and the content of consciousness, you discover that the peace you've been seeking was never lost. It was always here. You were just looking in the wrong direction, like looking for your glasses while they're on your head, like looking for your car keys while they're in your hand, like looking for happiness in the future while it's available now. Peace isn't something you achieve. It's not a prize you win after years of effort. It's something you discover that was always your essential nature. Like a fish that spends its whole life looking for water, without realizing it's always been swimming in it. Like a bird that spends its whole life looking for the sky, without realizing it's always been flying in it. And when you stop looking outside, when you stop looking to the future, when you stop looking in the mind and look inside, you find a treasure that no one can take from you, a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, a joy that doesn't need a reason, a love that doesn't have a specific object. That's what Eckhart calls the power of now. It's not a technique. It's not a philosophy. It's not a religion. It's a recognition of the simplest and most obvious truth, but one that our complex minds can lose sight of. You can only live in the present moment. This isn't poetry. It's a physical fact, an inescapable reality. The past only exists in your memory, which happens now. The future only exists in your imagination, which happens now. Everything you've ever experienced, you experienced in the now. Everything you will ever experience, you will experience in the now. Every joy you've ever felt, you felt in the present. Every peace you've ever experienced, you experienced everything in the present, everything. All the love you've ever known, you knew it in the present. And when you truly understand this, not intellectually but viscerally, when it stops being an idea and becomes a lived reality, you stop resisting the present moment. You stop wishing it were different. You stop living in constant tension between what is and what should be. And paradoxically, when you stop resisting what is, you discover an infinite capacity to respond creatively to what's happening. Because your energy is no longer being wasted in mental resistance. It's fully available for intelligent and appropriate action, like a river that stops fighting the rocks in its path and simply flows around them. Always finding the most natural, the most efficient, the most beautiful way. That's the difference between living from the mind and living from presence. The mind always wants to control. It wants things to be different. It lives in constant resistance to reality. Presence simply responds. It flows with what's happening. It finds opportunities where the mind sees only problems. The mind creates problems to solve. It transforms neutral situations into dramas. Presence dissolves problems by not feeding them with mental resistance. The mind lives in time, always in the past or the future, always dissatisfied with the now. Presence lives in timelessness, in the eternal now, which is the only reality. And when you discover this timelessness within you, when you recognize that your essence was never born and will never die, when you feel that you are consciousness knowing itself through this human experience, at that moment, you'll understand why Eckhart Tolle says stilling the mind isn't difficult, because you realize you were never the mind. You've always been the silence that observes the mind, and silence doesn't need to do anything to be silent. It simply is. Like space doesn't need to do anything to be spacious. Like consciousness doesn't need to do anything to be conscious. Like you don't need to do anything to be you. Remember the exercise we did at the beginning, closing your eyes for 3 seconds and counting your thoughts. Now I want you to do it again. But this time, when you close your eyes, don't count the thoughts. Don't try to stop them. Don't try to control them. Simply feel who is observing. Feel the presence that's here. Before any thought appears, feel the silent space where thoughts appear and disappear. That presence is you. It's always been here. Since you were born, before you learned to speak, before you developed a personality, quiet, peaceful, complete, untouched by any experience, waiting for you to stop looking elsewhere, waiting for you to stop identifying with the noise and recognize the silence that you are. And when you recognize it, when you recognize yourself, when you feel this presence not as something you have, but as something you are, you understand that there was never anything to fix. There was never anything to achieve. There was never anything to become. You already are everything you've ever sought. The quiet mind you want, you already are. The silence you seek, you already are. The peace you long for, you already are. The love you search for, you already are. The completeness you desire, you already are. You just forgot, because you were looking through the eyes of the mind. You were searching through the wrong instrument. Like trying to hear music by looking at the radio instead of listening. Like trying to smell the fragrance of a rose by analyzing its chemical composition. But now you remember. Now you know where to look. Now you recognize your true nature. And remembering is all that was ever necessary. It's not difficult to still the mind. It's impossible when you realize you were never the mind. You are the eternal silence where the mind appears. You are the undisturbed peace where thoughts dance. You are the infinite consciousness where all experience happens. And in that recognition, Your search ends, not because you gave up, not because you settled, but because you came home and discovered you never left. The door was always open. You were just looking in the wrong direction.